Can the classic Mac Pro from 2009 game in 2020? Can you even install Windows 10? Is it fast enough to run modern games? We'll find out right after this. This old Mac Pro can game in 2020 and it can run games very well. In this video, I'll show you how I installed Windows 10 on this Mac Pro, even though it's not officially supported. I'll show you the performance level you can expect through benchmarking, and I'll show you the type of games this computer is well suited for, and I'll talk about who should consider this classic Mac Pro. Why game at all under Windows? Can't you just download games and run them under Mac OS? You can, however, your choice of games is limited and the performance is not very good. Developers of games have been using Windows as the major platform to optimize performance for years and years. You can take the exact same hardware and the gaming performance under Windows will be significantly better than under Mac OS. You can see this when you run benchmark programs like Unigine Heaven. If you recall from part 3, in Unigine Heaven Extreme Setting, this classic Mac Pro achieved 48 frames per second. That is because Heaven runs on OpenGL. However, game developers don't focus on OpenGL, they focus on Windows DirectX API. With the same hardware running under Windows and DirectX, you can see the frame rates go from 48 frames per second to 67 frames per second. That's an increase of 40%. You would have to spend a lot of money in an upgraded graphics card to get an increase in performance like that. Windows 10. The classic Mac Pro is not supported in Boot Camp for Windows 10. That is true, however, the kind people over at Crystal Media, the makers of Mac's Fan Control, have provided a little guide on how to install Windows 10 and then show how to install Boot Camp drivers for the classic Mac Pro. I went through the steps of downloading Windows 10 from Microsoft's website and then burning a DVD. Yes, burning a DVD. I don't recall the last time I did that. I actually had to purchase a dual layer DVD to install Windows 10 since the file size went beyond 4.7 gigabytes, the limit of single layer DVDs. I burned the DVD using Mac OS and then powered down my Mac Pro and removed my Mac OS drive and any other drive bays. I then installed a blank SSD into another OWC Mount Pro, which will make it so easy to swap from Mac OS to Windows 10. Some people will want to dual boot on the same drive, and you can go that path. However, my experience has been horrifying when dual booting off of one drive, and if you've ever lived through the panic and anxiety of trying to restore access to both your Mac OS and Windows partitions with all of your precious data, paying a little money for another drive and drive sled makes this worry-free. With the computer case open, I also installed the original video card, the NVIDIA GT120, since the RX 580 was still tied up and being used in Mac the Ripper. With a blank drive installed and the Windows 10 DVD still in the DVD drive, I booted and let Windows 10 install. It took some time, especially seeing the boot screen, so be patient, but it all installed fine, and even the original wireless network card worked. I then installed the Boot Camp drivers by downloading and running a script called Brigadier that is used to download 2 Boot Camp driver packages, one for the classic Mac Pro and the other for the iMac Pro. You need to install a couple of drivers specific for the classic Mac Pro and then install the iMac Pro drivers and then reboot, and then it all just works. I then reinstalled the RX 580 Pulse and went to AMD's website to install the latest drivers. This classic Mac Pro is running the X5675 processor, and it is the best value CPU for this Mac Pro, as I described in part 3, link above and below. I then ran a few standard benchmarks in Windows 10. The Unigine Heaven and Valley benchmarks at 1080p medium settings provided a frame rate that was better than 60 frames per second and gives us an idea of what we can expect. I also downloaded and installed TimeSpy and Firestrike. I don't like to use these older benchmarks for absolute values for frame rates, but I do like to use them to get a general idea of where the system stacks up against other computers running Windows. In TimeSpy, this system score shows that this classic Mac Pro is better than 29% of other systems. If you break down the scale into thirds for high-end, mid-range, and entry-level, you can see that this system is at the upper end of the entry-level systems. Likewise, with Firestrike, you can see that the system score is better than 60% of the systems, and it is at the upper end of the mid-range systems. Now, TimeSpy is based on the newer DirectX 12 API that newer games use, while Firestrike is based on the DirectX 11, which is dominant in older games. Together, these benchmarks suggest that the classic Mac Pro is a good 1080p mid-range system for older games and a good 1080p entry-level system for newer games. Enough with the benchmarks. How does it play in today's games? I tested it with some of the more popular titles. Let's start with Fortnite. I ran this at 1080p epic settings, and the frame rates were in the 60 to 70 frames per second consistently. There were no lags and stutters, as the 6 cores and 12 threads of this CPU provided a smooth gaming experience. At some points, such as the dive, you will see frame rates dip into the upper 40s, but when in combat it stayed around 60 frames per second or better. I was really impressed that I could keep the epic settings, which does make the game look nicer. You could always get higher frame rates if you have a higher refresh rate monitor by lowering the settings. If you are looking for a system that can play Fortnite, then this is it. I then tested Apex Legends at 1080p medium settings, targeting 60 frames per second, and it had no issue maintaining that frame rate. It had very good performance and very good responsiveness. I then tried another popular title in CSGO. This also played really well, showing frame rates around 150 frames per second. I was able to find an FPS benchmark by Untitled to measure performance. I'll let that run so you can judge for yourself. Running that benchmark showed an average frame rate of 183 frames per second. Wargaming's set of war-type games by land, by air, or by sea worked well. Of the three, my favorite, World of Warplanes, gave just a wonderful playing experience with great frame rates and was very enjoyable. World of Warships is not exactly a fast mover and is easily played on this machine, and I finally found a benchmark for World of Tanks, and I'll let that play so you can see how well it performs. This old Mac Pro played so well, so I wanted to see how it would do with more modern titles. So I ran the benchmarks for Shadow the Tomb Raider, Ghost Recon Wildlands, and Ghost Recon BreakPoint, all at 1080p, and I'll let those run so you can see for yourself. In general, this system is fully capable of playing modern games like those shown, and it would also be fine with titles like StarCraft, War Thunder, Overwatch, Rocket League, and of course, if you're just feeling silly and you want to play some Minecraft, this machine can do it all day long with no problems. Where else can you play TNT Tag? This old Mac Pro can still game in 2020, and I would characterize it as a good 1080p system at medium settings. Who is this for? Maybe you're curious to run Mac OS, but the thought of a Hackintosh scares you, but you still want to do some gaming. This could be an option. It will allow you to run Mac OS by day for those creative apps like Photos, iMovie, GarageBand, and Final Cut Pro, and then switch to Windows to do some casual gaming by night. If you can salvage one of these from the recycle center or dumpster, or maybe for someone you know, and you just want to play games on a budget, then this is a very capable system. I wouldn't recommend this for a competitive gamer. This is for someone starting out with PC gaming or just a casual gamer who likes to hang out with friends online. As the benchmarks show, this is a solid 1080p gaming machine. Also, if you want to play the latest and greatest AAA titles, then you'll have to turn down the settings to get a playable experience, and at that point I might recommend you build a PC with more recent components. I did learn that the X5675 CPU is capable of higher speeds, up to 4.5 GHz, and that it is possible to overclock it under Windows. It does make me wonder if upgrading the GPU and overclocking the CPU could give a boost in performance and maybe even allow some light 1440p gaming at 60 frames per second. Overall, this classic Mac Pro is still a gamer in 2020. Like it if you learned something, share it, it really helps the channel. Subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see this Mac Pro pushed even further with an upgraded GPU and an overclocked CPU. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.